Hello, everyone. Today we are going to hear from Shelly Cheng for our first Q&A with an expert of 2024. We'll get started in just a minute. Going forward, if you have any questions that you would like me to ask Shelly during the Q&A portion, please put them in the chat. I will log them and ask them on your behalf. Here is Shelly. How are you doing, Shelly?
Very good. Hi, nice to see everyone here.
Thank you so much for joining us and for kicking us off. It's really exciting to have this event going and see it started again. I know it was really enjoyed last time.
Yeah, it's also this. I never used this platform before, so it's like still trying to figure out towards all the buttons and everything.
I'll be honest, same. But it seems like a good platform. So we'll give this a go. Cool. So do you want me to introduce you, or do you want to go ahead and just dive in, since this entire thing is about introducing yourself?
Sure. Okay, let me try to quickly see how I share my screen here.
Cool.
Okay. Oops. Can you guys see it or no? Oh yeah. Hello. So I prepared like a little slides here to see about what I'm talking. And yeah, if there's any question or you guys can't hear me or anything, like feel free to let me know during the process. So essentially, I want to say like really excited. So I really appreciate for the DVS Society to invite me to come today. So just like some brief intro about who am I. So I'm Shelly Cheng. I'm a award-winning journalist and database developer. I'm currently working for the election team at Associated Press. And then my past work experience has expanded like in journalism and both tech sector. So most recently, before AP, I worked as a software engineer at Splunk. Now it's part of Cisco now. It's a very recent merger and acquisition. So, and then previously, I also worked in various newsrooms, including the Wall Street Journal, NBC, and NPR, etc. And so I was think I heard from like them is like you guys most interested it's about my career and how I get here. So I think I want to kick off by starting about how I get into data visualization. So I actually get into the data visualization field from my from college. So I was getting into like the data visualization world first from the journalism side. Actually, I was working for my school newspaper at that time as a reporter. And that's like back when I was in college, that's also about the time when data journalism started to emerge as a field, as a new direction within the data journalism. I studied political science and computer science for my bachelor's degree. So I was very passionate about reportings and storytelling. And I also have like a computer science background. So at that time, it's like a natural transition for a lot of people. So my mentor and other senior reporter, they would just suggest me. They were like, "Oh, you should just go through getting to data journalism." So that's kind of how I started in this field. And then since we're talking about data journalism, I thought it would be nice to talk about what specifically is data journalism. I'm not sure like what type of background you guys are from in general, but I just gonna do a brief introduction. So essentially, it's like in data journalism world, it's normally divided by like the two types of people who do those type of work. It's like either data reporters who do a lot of like investigative and also writing, and it's mostly about like use data to tell the story. So they're more like the traditional reporter, but equipped with data skills. And then generally like this data skill set they required is like Python, Pandas, and R, and they would have like a possible beat. It could be like a healthcare data reporter. It could be like an education data reporter or climate data reporter. And so this is like one category. And then the second category is more like a data graphics reporter. It's like data visualization. So essentially, you will be in charge of creating data graphics, which is like quick and faster around. And those is like including the charts you saw like a newspaper, like using Illustrator, or like some common charting tool nowadays, like if you use like Data Wrapper, Flourish, or like JS. And this graphics reporter also include like the front end, like creative storytelling, which we normally talk about. And in some newsroom, you also come with like, you could also like assign to a specific beat, like healthcare, education, or climate. And I prepared for like some just examples of like what are we talking about when we're talking about like the graphics reporter. So like the daily graphics work, I have example here. It's like this is from NPR, like I did a while ago, and then you can see the chart here, right, about the debt limit, and then this chart was created by like Data Wrapper. So this is like kind of like a work. If you do data visualization in a newsroom, you will be able to do work like using this to create a lot of like those quick turnaround. Normally those like charts has to be done within the same day. So they'll say, oh, we're gonna publish today, we're gonna publish like an article about like maybe pooling data. So we have to have a chart to go with this. So this is like part of the daily stuff. And then we also have, this is a example of like a chart I did a long time ago for Wall Street Journal. It's about frozen food. So this chart specifically actually goes to the newspaper, and then this is like for used by like done by Illustrator. So this is like if you're working for like a newspaper, if they actually have the newspaper published like a daily, so you would also, a lot of charts has to be turned into like a newspaper version and go to be published, the next day. So this is like kind of example of the daily work. And then, so if we go back to here, we also have like some more like a front end development work, which is also are the type we talk about more. It's like the long-term project. The long-term project is like, could be like squally, and it could be like many other things. And those type of work normally took like months to do. For example, we could like, this is a squally example. It's about Texas election. And this is for this story, I think it took like about 2 to 3 months. Took me like from starting to finish. And then this story specifically is like, we kind of analyzed like the Texas election, I think from early 2000 to 2018, and to see how the election has been changed. So this is like example of like a squally, where we would break down the data and by the competitiveness of the district, and then we show sort of what has been changed, what hasn't been changed, and also like to try to highlight some district. And those is like, and then normally when like data visualization reporter like was assigned to those tasks, you have to do like a combination of those like long-term projects and also like those daily works as I talk about. So this is a kind of like like a simple summary about like what data journalism work look like. And then in some smaller newsroom, like, in large newsrooms like New York Times, Wall Street Journal, or like AP where I work right now, it's like we normally have like two different teams. Like data team is data team, and then the graphics team is like the graphics team. And then, but in smaller newsroom, such as like Texas Tribune, for example, they would have like just one data visual teams, which you have to do both a data work and the graphics work. So you have to both have like the front end and the data skills needed for the position. So this is kind of like just like a brief intro about what data journalism will look like. And then I was thinking I can show some, like this is like some like data viz work I did for Newsroom specifically. So the left one is about it's like at AP where we did for like a Super Tuesday result live page. And then this is like the second chart is like a sort of like a customized Sankey we did for GE's revenue data at Wall Street Journal. And then this on the top part, this one is like, it's actually from the story I showed earlier. So it's like if you scroll all the way down, we have a section where like user could enter their data and trying to see what it like and etc. Like we would say, for example, you could search for like your address in Austin, and then they will share with you like, oh, who's your like house district, what's your house district, what's your senate district, and who are like your incumbent for the people in charge of those districts, and who are your representative basically. And then this is like the bottom one is a story I did during COVID for NBC, and then this is like for let me find it. So this is actually what we did for about the spread of COVID. This is like a screen. This is like a screen recording of what it looked like earlier, because now the data is way crazier about the spread of the coronavirus. And this story is very interesting, is because it was, if you look at the date here, it was published very early. When we published the data, it was already like in February, like when COVID was not even that big of a deal in US. So it's like at that time, like the data was very, very small. And then right after we published, I think like around March or what, around March, COVID became a very big deal in US. So this map just like get hit by so much it gets like so much traffic. I think we have like over 1 million traffic just within months, because we're one of the first newsroom in US to put up with like a global pandemic like mapping chart. So this is like kind of this example. So those like kind of like what do you expect to in data visualization work in the newsroom? And it was like a funny thing is was actually like also was featured on TV too. So this is like the tracker here. So this is kind of like just want to give you guys an overview of like what kind of a data viz developer work expect like in a newsroom. And since I also worked in tech, I thought it would be helpful to talk about just like what's the difference between like a data viz roles like in journalism versus tech. So in journalism, like the two main sections, as I mentioned earlier, is like the daily graphics and also creative storytelling, which is like the longer term project. While in tech, from like the company I worked before, it's mostly about visualization library and the dashboard work. So essentially it's very different than what you expect like a database role in journalism will look like. Because in tech it's more about like build new features, fix bugs, and maintain the code base. And there's also like difference about tech stack. So in Newsroom it varies like a lot in Newsrooms, like whether it could be vanilla JavaScript plus D3, or sometimes like some Newsroom they would have frameworks such as like they would use React or other like different frameworks. And then in tech, I think it's like most common combination for this work is TypeScript and React, but it really depends on the tech stack of each company, whether they're like legacy code look like, what they expect, and etc. So this is like kind of a quick summary about like data viz work in journalism and tech. And then also feel free to post any questions or what you want me to cover during this process if you have any questions. And I want to just like to highlight the difference. I want to show some of work I also did in tech. So this is like a Viz component called parallel coordinates, which I was in charge of building during my time at Splunk. So essentially, it's like we create this Viz component. You can see there's a feature you can like filter the data on the axis, and then you can see like explore the data, and then you can also clear the filter, and then you can drag the axis to explore the different data and what has been changed and what has been not. And and then also you can like filter again while you're exchange. So it's like when we're doing like this is more like a visualization library work, and those type of work is more about like building a tool. So it's like a general purpose tool like which user can use, or like depends on the business. Like for Splunk, this is like other company they can use this to monitor their machine level like log data, etc. And then so let me go to the next page. So this is like kind of what it looks like if we put this component in our visualization library. So we would have like a dashboard where you can play the Viz library, like Viz component in, and there's like the menus on the side. You could like change colors, change the background, change opacity, and do all sorts of things. Go together with the library or with the Viz component. So this is kind of like a quick example of what we expect, for the Viz work. In if you're doing like more like a library or visualization type of work, in tech company. And go to next. So this is the next part I was gonna talk about election Viz at AP News, and if you guys have any questions about any other thing, like the things I talked in the past, and I want to follow up, I feel free to just drop it in the chat. But for election Viz at AP News, so it's very interesting. This is about my current team and the AP as a news agency. So we have been tabulated like election votes since like 1848 because there's like no central voting count authority in the U.S. And the fun fact is like this year is actually the first year AP published election content on its own website. I know it sounds crazy because we've been doing this for over 200 years, but I'm not sure how many of you guys like very familiar with it. But AP, unlike New York Times or Washington Post, AP actually as a news agency, it was a wire. So for a really long time, they focused more on B2B business, which is like providing content to other newsroom. So it's like we do the election data, we provide the election data to, for example, New York Times, and then they would use our data to talks about different things, and they will use the data to do their own bits. And we do election visualization too, but it's like it doesn't go on our own website, but you will see it, for example, in Yahoo News, or you would see it in Seattle Times, etc. Because I will show some example here. Before I talk about those two parts, I will first talk about the example. So this is actually like where you would see AP election Viz in the past, but this is this year. So this is like you will see it in Yahoo News. This is on the day of the Super Tuesday, March 5th this year. And you would also see it like, in January 15th when Iowa caucus starts, you will see our visualization was embedded on the side. And this is like from Seattle Times, and you will see like they would have, this is Viz is actually we created, but you would be able to see it like in their website for our, essentially they were like our client, they are our partner in Newsroom. They can use the visualization we create on their own site. So this is like this is also from us, and like what are we been doing for election. And they could change their colors. They could change color and try to use the things like use their own font and whatever on their website. And this is from PBS, and this calendar is also what we build is about election calendar. They will show user about they could use this on their website. And then this is from AGC, which is like a Georgia local newsroom. And this is also, it's like the same thing as you saw here. They just chose the different view. But this is essentially, it's like our client, like partner newsroom, they will use our component on their website. So, and as I talked before, for the past many years, like we don't put those Viz on our own website because AP was like, oh, we're more like a wire services. We support our own newsroom and we don't want to compete with our own newsroom. So this election this year is actually the first year. So you could actually see like all the things here I talk about on AP, our own website, and where I will show where you can find it. So essentially, if we're going to like, this is the apnews.com. So I want to keep the Super Tuesday here though. But this is where if you go to apnews.com, and then you can go to the election 2024 section. And then here you can see like those tabs you will link to the work we published. So this is the election result page, which is currently, this is this page is constantly changing given what elections happen next. So this is like an election timeline that will tell you so what's the next election. So this is where we're looking at it, going to be on the May 7th, and this is what it will. This is actually like the here what you say is the election happened like previously, but when we're approaching May 7th, you will see this page change, which will be tailored specific to this election. And then you can see like the visualization I showed like on our client newsroom before. We also have it on our own newsroom now. You can see the election result. It can link to like the Senate, the House, and the governor race and what to expect. And also you can drill down here to just go to a different election result page. Like here is like election about the it's for North Dakota on the March 4th, and then you can see like just different, like you can toggle down through the party, and I will find it clear, maybe like California as an example, where you can see like for California this year we will have both the president and the Senate and all just like different type of race. So it's like if we go to president, we will see like the result. And everything here you saw is like my team's like we were in charge of building, and all of this like here is like new. We kind of newly developed this year, like election for election specifically. You know, we have like maps, we have tables, but we redesigned everything for this election. And then this like timeline, visualization timeline is like I was in charge of building, which we finished like late last year, and this is like something new we just built this year to just help people to understand where we are at is different, like at the election, etc. And so, and the map, I think map is one of the things we're really proud of our work this year. It's hard to see like the second map because this race has already been over. But when the race in progress, this you would like the reader would actually see like two maps like side by side. So the left about like what the votes has been counted, and then the right side will be what the votes hasn't been counted yet. And I have a quick script recording about what to expect when the vote, like this is like as recorded while Vermont race was going in progress. So this is like kind of what you would expect to look at when we actually have the two race like racing progress. So we did this. This is something new we created this year because we're very curious about what to expect, and we really want to help like a better way for user to understand like what do you see about the election result is like just what's been current, and there's a lot of votes hasn't been counted yet, and those could be change the election result, and a lot of and on what to expect it. So this is about like the map part, and then we have also like some feature here. It talks you about California election schedule. What do we have, and what's the upcoming, and this is like some key race you can look at. And the same thing, we can toggle to California like the Senate race, and like also House race. So this is kind of like a general idea about like our election page. And we also have a specific page for Super Tuesday this year, and this is also new. And so for Super Tuesday, this component is also new. So the vote count progress. So essentially, I know it's hard to see it now, but during when the election is in progress, you will see like after the vote, each state has been called, you will see like the check mark here, and you will see like the bars going like from 0% to 100%. And 100% actually means like it has already been finished. 99%, 100% means the vote has already been certified. 99% means like it's like we think it's finished, but the government hasn't declared like has been finished yet. And then we also have this like demographics, specifically just about Super Tuesday states, to let people understand like what's the population likes and etc. And this page, unfortunately, because we want to like you have to know the URL to see it, or you have to Google like Associated Press like Super Tuesday live result, because it's no longer as like a tab here, because we only keep the most recent stuff like about what's coming on our website. But the page, the link is still there, and you can see what it's like. So and also some other things we did for election this year is about the delegate tracker. So this is a delegate tracker, like you can get it from here. The delegate tracker is like something standard, like you would always expect to see like during the election, and a lot of newsroom like will have this too. And then we have like the Republican and also Democratic. So you can like toggle. And then we always keep like the most updated data to this. So it's like you can see like once after a race is over, you'll be able to see it was like once the delegates has been allocated, it will be like normal, like will be updated like right afterwards in our tracker. So this is where we're at now. So and then this is like all the upcoming races remaining in the in like during the primary. It's kind of, I mean, it's kind of like, I think the primary has been died down, especially after like Super Tuesday, and after like Donald Trump and Biden crossed like the majority, which like across like the needed delegates they needed for nomination. But this is like the place where people can just track exactly what's like how many delegates they get from each state. And then for our page, like you can also like this is also a drill down. So it's like you can click here, that will take you back to like the Arkansas page, etc. So I think this is about like some major page we publish about election on our own website. And I saw there's like a lot of a lot of questions in the chat now. So maybe I can just like before I talk about the next section, I can try to see answer some questions first. So I think one person, Andrew, asked what is like my design process, like the looks, colors, functionality for the stories on the AP. I assume you're talking about elections specifically. So I think for elections, one thing very interesting about it is like election kind of there's always the things you would like you 100% need to do. For example, like well, I would argue like we all know like election you would have like some sort of equivalent of like a table which will show you how many votes each person has been get, and also how many like what are the vote percentage, and who win this race, etc. So this is like something we always expect to see. And then also like a map. The map is like something we also always expect to see. And the same thing about like on the national scale, we always expect to see something like a national map about who win each race, etc. And I think for us, a very important thing is about how to make sure we present the most accurate information to the reader. Like we will think about, is there anything new we should to show to the reader? That's what like leads to for the map section, right? So this year we add the second map because we think just showing like the result for like during the election when the votes just come in is kind of misleading, because you will see like, oh, this map is like all Trump's vote. It's like he really won't, but in reality there's like a lot of things could happen. I think a very good example would be Vermont. So Vermont has a very tight presidential primary this year, and when this race is going in, like first it's like it's really hard to tell. Like you wouldn't see when in the early election you wouldn't see that many, like for example suppose like the Nikki Haley, the votes comes from like where Nikki Haley when the county comes a little bit late, then in the early stage of the race you would only see just like a red map while the other parts like being just empty yet. But with like, we think it's like with the uncounted votes, you would know, oh, there's other county and how many votes they remain counted. So you could like really help user to see the likelihood of like how easy or not like to flip the election on that perspective. So this is like some innovation we did this year. And also we did like, we really like the more like a circle version. This is more like a traditional version of like an election map, but we feel like geography doesn't represent that accurately about, you know, the votes share, but it's more about like the space, like how large the county is. It's kind of misleading in a way. So we put like the circle map as our first preference to show like the results. And then this color is new. So we kind of like chose like, we really carefully to choose like the colors for the candidates, like as you to reserve certain color. And then we have to do a lot of work for maps specifically, like to make sure, because before the election, we don't know whether it was just gonna, you know, Donald Trump will make most state, or maybe, you know, DeSantis could be a big state. So we want to make sure like our maps looks like with all those candidate color, it looks like good and accessible, and it's like not misleading. So that's, I think that's like kind of just to use a quick example about like looks, colors, and functionality. And then functionality wise, it's like, I think we always know the basic things we need to do. We just have to improvise on like the new things we have to do and to achieve that. And what? Okay, let me see what others questions. So how big is my current team? The election team at AP is actually pretty small. We have like, we previously has 4 developers. Right now we only have 3 developers. And then I think we have 2 designers, but it's only one designer was doing like a full-time design work for election team. The other designer did like half a time on design and a half time on, you know, some other like just like daily or long-term projects at AP. So it's not election specific. You cover like, you know, the climate change or fire, like a wildfire or like a wars or Ukraine and many other things. So he would also doing like some design work for those stuff. And some pain point. I think the one thing for me is like election is so important. So it's like a lot of things we have to go through many iterations, and we have to even like present it to VP just because it's very important, and especially like it's a very high stake work. So we have to balance a lot of like different opinions sometimes from different stakeholder. Like they might have different preference, and I would think it's less autonomy for like compared to some other like creative storytelling, like for example compared to like this work, like this Texas like election work before, like this is like, it's, if we're doing something more like creative storytelling, I can have more ownership in a way about where the story going, and what I want this to be, and then ask just after I finish like the design and talk to the editor and ask for their feedback. But I think for something like election, it's like we kind of have to engage in a conversation with the stakeholder and also pull like other people who at AP, like we have decision desk, who they are like the people who call the race. So AP actually calls the race for all the election, like who win based on the result. So we'll have to talk to them and then trying to keep a lot of people like updated with what they would expect, and they were okay with the direction we're taking and how many candidates we show. So I think that's very different in that regard. And then the collaboration like is like some projects like we all like everyone would talk about, for example, like it's a big one, like the map, everyone will get to see what you like kind of provide the feedback what we want the map to be. And some others, like for example, some smaller things is like this timeline. So it's like we kind of discuss the idea about the timeline. We have like some design, like the designer come up with a design interview, the design, like a first draft of design block, and then I will just be in charge of building this whole thing. And after I have like one iteration, I meet with the designer. We kind of just, it's more like I think compared to tech, the main difference between Newsroom is like there's a lot more like design and code in progress. So it doesn't normally like I think tech is more likely you have a pixel perfectly like Figma. And then you go from there as a developer to design those stuff. But for Newsroom, it's like I think we're operating like a faster timeline, and also we don't have as like like we have less just engineering and design like capacity compared to like a tech company. So a lot of times we have to do a lot of design and code together. So it's like we have a version and then I met with a designer, so we would just like tweak the code live and try to see what we want come up with. We might just never get another a mock again. And a lot of changes of the design will be based on the data we have. So I think that would be one thing. And who and what role do I work closely with usually? So for me, I'm like my title is like a database developer. So I work with a designer most like with our designer. We only have like we only have one full time like election designer. So I work with her pretty frequently. And then if there's like some project, for example, like for delegate tracker, we at that time we have like two developers on this because it has to be built like in very fast paced at the time. So I will work most closely with the developer, the other developer who I have like on the same project, and especially when people use different tools. So for AP specifically, we actually don't have different tools because we everything. That's one thing interesting about AP is AP. Like my current team, we actually more like if you guys remember, like earlier in my presentation, I talk about kind of the difference um, between like a journalism team and like a database in journalism and tech. And AP, my role at AP right now is actually something weird, like very interesting. It's kind of in between because AP will have those like B2B like business, like those like the thing you see here, like other newsroom will use of a kind. So we in that regard, we actually has a design library. Like everything you saw here on our own website is part of our own design library. So we have to maintain a code base like a tech company to make sure everything is like iterate on the same thing. So everyone has to work in within the same design library. And so it's like it's the same tech stack in that regard. And what else? Could you talk about the feed? So I think Anna has a question about can I talk about integrating accessibility and feature into data visualization in journalistic report? So I think for us, it's like one very big thing for election, at least at AP, regarding the accessibility is actually the color. Like the color here, you saw like let me go back to the Vermont example. Like we did a lot of work to make sure like here you saw like this screen you can see there's like 4 color we reserved for this. So like Nikki Haley, Donald Trump, Chris Christie, and Don Sanders, we did a lot of like careful choices about this 4 color, and we did a lot of testing before like to envision what election result could go, and if this 4 color has to shows like equally importance on the map, whether it still looks good or not. And then some other like accessibility feature we support is like we would make like we have like all the basics like for the screen readers, and we have like aerial labels and everything. So we support base. I think could be improved in general, just like in newsroom visualization in general. I think we can do better job with election with accessibility. But so far I think we have to make sure at least all the bases are covered, and we're trying to like when we have more bandwidth, we're gonna expand and hopefully provide like an even better experience for other people's. And okay, so the next question from Lee is how important do I find it to be mindful of how the audience views my web visualization and with people view from desktop browser or in mobile and tablet, etc.? Do I just depends on the tool used to create automatic them to take those layout or viewing adjustment into account? That's actually not true. So for a lot of visualization, and I did in the past, I actually have to design like separately for what I expect it to look on desktop and mobile. I will find an example. So like this is a GE graphics I talked about earlier. So this chart specifically, like even from the screenshot here, you will see this is a desktop version. This is what you expect to like the thing look like on a desktop. And then this is a mobile version. So I have like when we designed it, we specifically, because it's really hard to fit into the text like into the chart for the mobile version. So we have to actually like think about creatively how we want the text to be, and then without interrupting the flow. So what we end up deciding is like on desktop, we just like, you see here, like we just insert a box inside the chart. So that's exactly like this is a year when that happened. I think it's like 80, like 8, so they 83, 1983. So we just insert the box here. So we have like a lot of work, even like very early on in the design process. We have to think about what a desktop, like a mobile view would look like. Sometimes some newsroom, they even go with like the idea about mobile first. So it's like what exactly we want the mobile to be. And this is especially true for creative storytelling project. Because I feel for like some more, like I guess for some, table, like a visualization like this, like a page like this, it's like it's easier to imagine, like I can show you guys what a mobile version look like. But this is like easier to envision what we expect the mobile to look like, right? Which is like the cards, we can just like show one column instead of 3 column on mobile. And but for some other like more innovative, especially customized viz, we'll have to think about very careful. Okay, it's kind of snow right now, but I'll do this. Yeah, so this is like, I have to turn off my, we have to, yeah, so this is like we just show total column, and it's very easy to envision what is like. Let me turn this off. Envision what a desktop, like what a mobile look like, and then we have to think about exactly where we want to play this, like to play like the navigation. So we move the navigation to the bottom compared to on desktop, the navigation is actually on the top. So there's a lot of like thoughts go to what exactly we envision like the desktop to be, and like envision what like a mobile version to be. So let me go back to the next question. So from Hillary, she was asking, how do I turn charts into newspaper chart? How do those charts different from a non-newspaper chart? That's actually a very interesting question. So I haven't, like in my most recent 2 3 jobs, I don't need to do newspaper charts anymore, but I will use Wall Street Journal as an example. So like this chart, right? This chart is like you saw, it's like a this is like a specific, like those font. If we look at like Wall Street Journal's website, if I just randomly go to Wall Street Journal, like WSJ, like we can go to, let's just pick random things on their website with a chart, hopefully. Where can we find a story? They have a chart. Maybe we go to business. Yeah, so here you will see this is like a Wall Street Journal. What is the chart to expect in their website? And you can tell like from those two, they have different fonts and they also have different style. and everything. But you could imagine this thing will look like something similar like here, but it was like a different font and everything. So for this type of work, for Wall Street Journal specific, is like we have a daily newspaper, so a lot of charts we have to do 2 versions, and then they have different charting tools. So Wall Street Journal, I think they have their own charting tool, something similar to Data Wrapper, but it's like they have a in-house tool, so they have their own engineering team like maintain and build this chart, and so you can plug the data in like a data wrapper, and then they will show you what this to expect. And so for the Illustrator, they also have some thing like as like a Illustrator plugin, but it's more like a starter. So it's like they could give you like the bar chart in the shapes, or like the bar chart in the shapes you want, and then we have to play with the Illustrator to place it in the way we want it to be. And as a fun fact is like newspaper, if you guys would know, if you guys ever get a chance to work for a newspaper, you would know what I'm talking about. Newspapers sometimes we will have a very like a last minute like chart change. For example, I initially did this chart like as a one version, like it could be like just a 2 column. This is like a kind of 4 column chart, so it means like it's like a 4 column on the newspaper. But depends on how the story was feeling on the newspaper on the day. You might get a request 4 p.m. from the editor. They were like, "Oh, okay, we actually now need to turn this like 4 column chart into 2 column because that's the space we have in the newspaper." So you'll be like last minute, you have to like remove this everything, maybe shuffle this part to here, and then maybe shuffle this part to here to make it like a 2 column so they can go with the newspaper. So that's something very very different. And let me see something different. Okay. Are you okay? I think I will address some other questions later because it's like now related to like the election with specific. So I will go back to like trying to finish up what I was talking earlier about election list. So I showed you guys like some like this is like the new pages way down, like the Super Tuesday live result, the election result page, and also the individual race page and delegate tracker. This is like some new page we did at AP. And then I want to go more details to talk about the new Viz component. So the map I already showed you guys. The map is like a new, and then the candidates table is new. So something interesting about the candidates table is I think it's hard for you to see it right now because the race has been called, but it actually looks very different. Not very different, but it looks slightly different when the election is in progress. So I will show, I think I have this like a screenshot here about what it looked like. Not this one. Maybe I forgot to add it. But I will find it. I will just talk about it here. So here it's like you saw like after the election is called, like this is take over the whole line. But when the election is in progress, it's actually the background bar is proportional to the result here. So it will be just like, do I have annotation tool here? Maybe not. But when the election is in progress, what you saw is actually just like you will see the background, like if it's 88.3%, and then this will be 88.3%, this will be 6%. So you will see a line here and with respect to their color. But once the election was called, so we declare the winner, you will see like this whole color take all over the space. If I get time earlier, I can find like a screenshot for you guys to show more about what like in process election look like for the table. And then the timeline nav. For the timeline navigation specifically, if you guys have you noticed, we actually have different version. So this is like a Republican race timeline. But if we toggle to like a Democrat, this is actually a Democratic version of timeline because the like for weirdly, like in US, like because sometimes the party or the state government decide like when they want to have the primary. So even for the same states, they could have like their Republican presidential primary and the Democrats primary. They're not on the same date. They have like totally different date, and they're about when the elects, when like the certain things gonna happen, etc. And some dates you only have elections for one party. Some days you have it like for multiple parties. So this is for the timeline now. And we also have a version of timeline, which this is like the version right now you saw on this version. So this one doesn't have color because this is actually a two-party timeline, two-party version. So like you can see here, now it's like on May 7th, you can see, oh, we have both like Democrats and Republican presidential races. And then for the Puerto Rico, this is just Democrats races. And then this is like for both GOP and Democratic Party. So this is like some details if you guys just to for fun if you guys are curious. And what other things we have? Oh yeah, this is like the presidential vote progress. This is like the one I talked earlier on the Super Tuesday page. It's about this viz. So this viz is like when the race is called, you would just be able to see like this things going on, like this check mark here about who win the race, and then the progress. So this is like a new thing we added this year just to help people understand what like to get basically on the homepage you can see if today like for Super Tuesday we have like more than 10 states have race, what to expect and their progress to help them understand. And yeah, I think that's kind of the main thing I want to cover for AP election viz. And I will go to some other more general questions and about just AI, like about data visualization and AI tooling in general. So I think I saw a question about from Lee. Are you using any AI tools, and do you see them being helpful for your current work? Yeah, I think I used a lot. Like I use ChatGPT a lot. It's like when I debugging or designing the viz, or even sometimes just brainstorm. It's like I was like, oh, I need 5 colors. Give me like 5 accessible color. I will see whether it works or not. And for I think for visualization specifically, um, I think like sometimes if I find something I don't understand, I would ask like ChatGPT. And there's about, oh, what is this bug going on? Maybe it's not always helpful to keep in mind, but I feel like sometimes it provides a lot of insights I don't normally see otherwise. And I think some other AI tooling potentially could be useful in the future. We haven't widely applied yet. Like AP has an AI team, a newly founded AI team, which they're exploring more about like how AI could be used in newsroom in general, like maybe with content summary, etc. That's like different from our team. But I definitely think for our team specific, there's has future, like for example, maybe translation could be use AI and to help optimize it. But I think the struggle right now is like AI has like the hallucination problem, so it's not everything is accurate. But for newsroom, I think accuracy matters more than anything else because like we couldn't just like you couldn't just say, oh, because AI return bad results sometimes, so this is like fine to have it on our website. It's like I think for newsroom credibility is everything, so this is like completely not okay. So I think the AI tooling will only be used if we can make sure it has very very like almost like non like I don't know, like it has to be pretty much close to a 100% accurate for us to put any things generated by AI directly on our website. Otherwise, it's like we always need a human in the loop. So it's like we wouldn't be use AI like directly to put something on the website. Um, so I think there's another question from Nancy asked me what tips do I have to make the dev process efficient. I think for me, the most helpful thing is like I think through. So I really like to drawing diagrams about what I design my component to be. Like, for example, it's like if we're thinking about like try to think about example like a page like this, there's a lot of data flow in, right? We have to fit in different data to everything. So there's also like a control about like those overall navigation to make sure it flies like smoothly without redo work. I think for me, it's very important when I build something, like if I build something, even something small, I think about like I would draw like a diagram. It's like how many layer of data do I like data, what data I need to pass to the next layer. And then maybe we have like, for example, for a map, let me find a map. Like for a map, right? It's like, oh, maybe I have an SVG layer, which is like for the base thing. And then I need to have like a tooltip where a tooltip was called as a separate component so we can show this result. And also how the data I have to pass to each one and how to prevent re-rendering. So I think especially for architect, like a complex visualization with like an enormous amount of data, it's very important to think about like beforehand. It's like how my data will be processed at each layer and what data. So it's like it'll be helpful to actually join like a diagram about even your data flow, like in the React, like where I envision the data to be and etc. And to show to like help people like understand what exactly is going on. And because I feel like especially late in the development process, if you have to rechange the design or like the architecture design, it's really a pain, and you have to redo a lot of like work you have been already done. And in Newsroom, sometimes like we don't have that much time because the deadline is normally hard deadline. You wouldn't be able to see like, oh, like I feel like in tech, there's sometimes has more flexibility. It's like, oh, if the things is not ready by this release date, we can push the release date. But when you work in Newsroom, especially in election, you can't really push the deadline because if there's gonna be a race next Tuesday and this thing has to be ready before next Tuesday, it has to be ready before next Tuesday. So you really couldn't like I couldn't let say, oh, election, can you happen the next day just because I haven't finished this thing? So I think the time management aspect is essentially critical if you're doing like this role for in Newsroom. And I saw a new question from Arby. How does your team make sure that the data visualization you publish can be understood with people with varying level of data literacy? What things push your team to publish a more complex viz? This is actually a very good question. So we struggle with this like on a daily basis because if we think about election and audience specifically, there's like people who are very, very passionate about election result. They're like always in the election data. They talk about like what's going on. But then election also we have like the general audience, right? Like we want to show them what they needed to know. We don't want to over them with unnecessary information. I think for currently our approach is more about like for those things like for election result, we do the most straightforward way. So we want to make sure user understand the election, like give them the most essential information, like who win which election and what like what the percentage they win. And then you can see this is like some other things about we actually dropping information sometimes to make sure it's like less overwhelming. Like the tooltip here you saw, it's actually very similar to the summary table, right? Like, so if I click into this page, this is like the summary table. It's like a simpler version of the summary table because we don't want overwhelming. Like, so we remove the background color. Now it's just like a small check mark about who won, and then we kind of make everything smaller. So it just like don't have the more information. But here it's like you saw more information. You also saw more candidates, right? You can expand here, but like when you saw the tooltip, you only would see 3 candidates. Then the others, like other candidate would just be a small line, in the bottom, kind of show you what the percentage vote, but they were not the focus. So I think most people, especially general public, they're not that like well versed in the data world. So we want to present the things like as easy as possible, so they can just look at the the most complex things right away. But for for the story, like for like the creative storytelling, if we're doing like a more detail, like let's analyze election result in the past 20 years, like the piece I talk about like Texas Tribune, like this story, we have like even story like this, we have to go through a lot of process about how we simplify data, because in order to help people understand that, like the heat, we created the heat index, which you saw the label here, actually like specifically just to help to make this story easier to understand, because we can come up with like the value, like the character, like some adjective to describe the race, like hot, warm, cool, cold. So that's like easier for people to understand. Oh, that means hot means this race is very competitive. Cold means this race is not competitive. So we even for this type of story, it's all about the data. We have to do a lot of work to break down the notes and everything to make people understand. So
Well, we are at the hour. I just want to hop in and say thank you so much for coming. This has been excellent information. To round us out, do you have one piece of advice for people looking to get into data visualization today, something that they can start doing?
I think the biggest advice would be, okay, let me actually stop screen sharing. I think the biggest advice for me would be portfolio. It's always been portfolio. I feel like no matter whether you want to, I think if you want to get a data viz job at tech, sometimes it varies, because I think some tech company, they actually do more generic hiring. So it's like the viz team, they doesn't really like have the specific interview. It's like you interview as a general like software engineer and the front end engineer, and then you specifically ask to do like say I want to work for the viz. So like those type of process is different. But I think for in general, like no matter whether you want to do this work or like either in Newsroom or data viz specific, it's always portfolio. I feel like people, it's a very small industry, and if you have great work, a lot of people will hear about you, and they will even reach out to you for opportunities. And just do some projects with interesting data in your free time. And it's like I think that will be the biggest advice. And then trying to see what other people are doing and trying to explore like data and always come with cool projects. So
that is amazing advice. For anybody whose question was not answered today, Shelly is in the DVS Slack community in the early career channel. Feel free to reach out to her through Slack or post your questions in the channel. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. And thank you, Shelly, so much.